welcome back to my channel. In today's video, we're going to be doing my 1 month postpartum update. In this video, I'm going to be exclusively talking about my personal experiences, symptoms, and overall well-being after I gave birth to Jace until now. If you guys are interested in seeing an update about Jace and his 1 month, I'll leave a link in the description box down below. Also, make sure to check out my labor and delivery story if you guys haven't done so already. I'll leave those links in the description box too. Okay, so to kind of get started in my 1 month postpartum update, I meant to make more videos, but as you guys can see and what I tell you, it's been really crazy and I've had a lot of unexpected turns and twists in my postpartum phase. So I was fortunate enough to have a pretty good pregnancy and a very smooth birth overall. There were a couple bumps and bruises along the way, but as I mentioned in my video, I was pretty lucky overall to have the birth that I had, and I was overall very happy with the output of my birth and I was very satisfied. So kind of taking me back to when Jace was first born, after they had patched me up and everything, I did tear, like I said in the video, so they didn't have to do stitches on me internally. I didn't have any episiotomy, and there was no other birth interventions that were needed. They didn't use any forceps. They didn't use the vacuum. Everything went, other than getting the epidural, was very natural in terms of the birth process, other than me tearing, obviously, and that had to be repaired. So as soon as I gave birth to Jace, and as soon as they were done patching me up, I had my family come in and visit for a little while, and then they pretty much took Jace and went to run some tests on him and make sure everything was functioning properly. Like I said, he did have the cord wrapped around his neck when he first came out of the birth canal, and at that point, they wanted me to try and go pee, and I was able to, and they usually have you do that pretty early on after you give birth to make sure everything's functioning properly. So I went in there and I was so shocked at how much blood, like, if you guys have never given birth to a baby before, this is like a period times like 3. It's so much blood. And I remember just standing up and the toilet was just like full of blood, like it was just bright red. Anyway, sorry for being a little graphic there. They give you like the squeezy bottle, at least they did for me. I'm not sure if it's because I just tore or they do that with all women, but they give you like this little squeezy bottle, and basically you have to spray yourself clean, kind of like a bidet, but like for front and back, because they don't want you to wipe and kind of get anything caught in the stitching that they did, or, you know, just cause any type of infections. If you get the epidural, they usually, in the hospital I gave birth at, they have 2 suites. They have the labor and delivery suite where you go and you give birth to your baby, and then they have the mother and baby suite, which you're transferred to after you give birth, and you get the all clear from the physician. So basically the test to go to mother and baby is to be able to walk around by yourself and stand and walk for about 2 minutes without any assistance, and if you decide to get the epidural. And like I said, I did end up getting the epidural in my labor. However, during the pushing phase, they did back off on it, very, very much so, and I was able to feel a lot of pain and a lot of pressure when I was pushing him. And like I said in my video, that really helped me out a lot, and I'm so thankful that they did that, because they backed off so much. By the time everything was said and done and I was walking around, it was pretty much completely out of my system at that point. I was able to walk around fine. So they brought me upstairs to mother and baby, and while we were still in the hospital, I didn't really feel any pain at all. I was really fortunate. I had some muscle soreness, obviously, in my back, in my legs, in my thighs, but that was really just from the exertion of pushing him out, because like I said in my video, I wanted Jace to be out quickly. I've heard those horror stories of women in the pushing phase for hours, and I didn't want that to be me, so I was just pushing him as hard as I could. So I was really, really exerting myself, so that contributed to the muscle soreness, but I was fine with it. I really didn't feel any pain. The scarring I had, but it really didn't hurt me. I really wasn't in any pain, especially considering like what I had just been through and the ordeal of the labor. Like, it was really nothing. So I was fine walking around. I didn't have any problems at all. I was tired, obviously, but other than that, my recovery was pretty quick. And the time I was in the hospital, I did walk around the ward a couple times. I had Garrett with me, and I had Garrett help me take a shower just in case I suddenly felt a moment of weakness. However, everything was fine. It was pretty smooth. I was discharged normally. We were able to go home 2 days later, and I actually wasn't even wheeled out. I just walked out. I felt completely fine. I was able to walk. I carried Jace up the stairs. Like, I felt so good. And I continued to feel this way like a few days, and then continuing. I never felt any pain. I never really felt any fatigue, other than, being tired from not sleeping because of him. But yeah, so overall my first week was pretty smooth. Like, everything went pretty smoothly, and the only thing that kind of sucks is, if you guys don't know, if you haven't given birth to a baby before, you will bleed for a long time after you give birth. So it's like a period that lasts like twice as long. I kept bleeding for about 2 weeks after I gave birth to Jace, and it's like really nasty blood. They give you these maternity pads, and they're huge, and I actually took a lot from the hospital, and I'm glad I did, because if I had used my regular pads for my periods, they never would have been able to withstand the amount of blood that came out of me. And it's also a lot of like kind of nasty stuff. There's like lochia, if you guys know what that is. It's kind of like a brown yellow color, and it's kind of like the mucus, and it's just everything kind of coming out of your uterus, and your uterus trying to return back to its normal size. So that's pretty stinky, and it's pretty gross, and it's pretty disgusting, and it doesn't make you feel that fabulous. But I mean, it's just a part of the birth. And 2 weeks after I gave birth to Jace, actually, Garrett ended up getting sick. And that was tough because he had a fever of 102 when we took it here, and he went to the urgent care, and I was freaking out. I was convinced he had the flu, and I was like, what are we gonna do? We have a new baby. Like, I'm so exhausted. Like, I need help. Like, I can't do this on my own. I'm so tired. So we were kind of just freaking out, and his mom ended up coming and taking him to the urgent care. Meanwhile, I had my brother come and pick me up, and I went to stay at my parents' house with Jace and kind of my other family members to help me out, because I was beyond exhausted. I had been up that night caring for Garrett, caring for Jace. So Garrett came home, and he was wearing masks. They said it was okay for him to be around the baby, but he needed to be wearing a mask, and he really needed rest. So I kind of just stayed at my parents' house for the day, and he slept. And then later on we came back, and I kind of just let Garrett rest, and it was tough, but eventually he recovered, and things were starting to look good again. And this is when I started having some symptoms from the maternity. So this is when I started having my postpartum symptoms. Like, it started to hit me around this time. As soon as Garrett started to recover, the first thing I noticed was the back pain. And I don't mean muscle pain, like muscle spasm pain. What I mean is, and I feel like a lot of women have talked about this before, if you've had an epidural, leave in the comments down below if you can relate to the symptom, because I'm really curious. So I have this back pain, and it's very localized in my spine, and I'm almost 100% positive it is exactly the place they stuck me with the epidural. And it's not like excruciatingly painful, but it's really uncomfortable. It's kind of like that almost like tickling pain sensation that's like really uncomfortable, but can sometimes be borderline painful. That's kind of the sensation I feel, and it's pretty localized to that one area. Like, and I noticed it whenever I would bend over, whenever I would roll over in bed. There wasn't any redness or anything like that. It was just this very weird pain, this very weird phenomenon. But I feel like I've heard women talk about this before, so if you guys have felt this, please let me know so that I'm not crazy. I spoke with other people about this, but I spoke with some physicians about this, but they didn't really seem to give it much merit. So I kind of just let it slide, but it's something that has been persisting that I really didn't expect. So that was kind of took me by surprise, and that kind of was very unpleasant, because anytime I would lean over to pick up Jace or to pick up something off the floor, to do anything, to do chores, whatever it was, it just caused me a lot of discomfort. Aside from that was the time that I started to develop really bad constipation. Now guys, like, when I mean really bad, I mean like it was stuck in me. Like, I could not get it out. So this was right around the time about Easter, like right before Easter. And what happened was all of a sudden, I had no problems going poop like at the hospital. Like I had gone before they discharged me and everything. There was no problems. And normally I'm a person, sorry guys, this is really like too much, but I'm just trying to be real with you guys. So normally I really don't go every day. I'll go like every few days or so. And then I noticed that I had really not gone for like 5 or 6 days to the bathroom. And then one day, like I had the urge to go, and let me tell you guys, like it was so painful. Like I remember screaming and crying to get this out, and I just couldn't get it out. I was bleeding, I was crying, I was screaming. Like it really almost rivaled my birth with Jace. It was really, really bad. And at least with your pregnancy, you kind of have your uterus helping you contracting to get the baby out, and at least you have that mindset and that motivation. But when it's you know, when it's just trying to poop something out, you don't really have those added handicaps. What ended up happening is that I was on the toilet probably for like 30-45 minutes, and I was just screaming and crying. It was so painful, guys. And what had happened is that I had got it so far, and then it got stuck, and no matter how hard I tried, like it just wouldn't come out. And I knew that if I really exerted any further, that I was just gonna rip and tear myself open. So what I ended up doing, I asked Garrett to call the doctor. They told me I could take some stool softeners, but because I'm breastfeeding, I couldn't take any laxatives because it could potentially be harmful to Jace. So but I made Garrett go out and buy laxatives at that point, and I kind of just sat on the toilet, and I kind of just like let it go back in me, and that's really painful, guys, let me tell you, especially when it's like right there but it's stuck. Like that's incredibly painful. But I was alone with Jace. Like Jace was crying, I needed to attend to him, so I just kind of had to suck it up, even though it was incredibly painful. And later on, when Garrett got back with the stool softener, I realized that it takes 12 to 36 hours to go into effect, and this really just broke me. I was miserable, to say the least. Like I really just sucked it up. Like I could feel it stuck in me. I could feel the pain. It was so incredibly uncomfortable, but I just sucked it up, and I took the pills, and I didn't try to go again because I didn't want to really put myself through that pain again unless I knew it would come out. So the next day I tried to go again, and it didn't happen again. And at that point I was really frustrated. I was really beaten down. I was so emotional. Luckily Garrett had paternity leave, so he was able to, he had been with us this whole month. So I've been very fortunate to have him for help. So I just had Garrett watch the baby, and I was like in the bathroom crying. And this went on for like a few days, me trying to go, me crying and screaming, and I mean screaming, guys, on the toilet, in pain, crying out, blood coming out of me. So, and then eventually it was on the day of Easter that it just felt more and more, and I felt like I couldn't hold it in anymore, but at the same time, like it was so packed that like I knew I wasn't going to be able to pass it, but it was so incredibly uncomfortable, and I debated going to the doctor, to be honest with you guys, and like having them take it out of me because it was too much. Like too much had packed into my bowels, and at this point, because I wasn't able to pass it, like, so I did some research and I found this thing called magnesium citrate. Let me know if you guys have tried this in the comments. So it's supposed to be a fast acting natural way to kind of loosen your bowels. So we bought it on Easter, and it's just, you have to drink the whole drink, and it's actually like the size of like a normal, I don't remember how big it was, but it was like around the size of like a water bottle. And this thing is vile, let me tell you. It is nasty. There's like vinegar in it. It's just really nasty. And I had to drink the whole thing, and I am really bad at taking medicine. I'm really bad at taking pills. Like I hate the taste. I just want to spit it out of my mouth. Like it makes me gag. I hate it. So I was being a baby about it, and it was really hard for me to kind of drink the whole thing, but eventually I did. And it says this was more fast acting. It said like about 6 hours or so. So I waited, and then eventually like 6 hours later, like it all came out of me, and it was such a relief, but it was still painful. Like it still wasn't completely broken up, but a lot of it had been liquefied, but the rest of it was still hard, and it was still really hard to pass. But at that point my body was just already going, so like everything just kind of came out. There was a lot of blood, but I was so thankful for it to be out. And unfortunately, my constipation problems didn't end there. After that episode, like, I was doing okay for a few days, and then it started to happen again and again. I continued taking the pills, the stool softeners, and basically I've just had a lot of erectile bleeding, burning, pain every time I go to the bathroom. I was really convinced there was a tear. However, when I went to speak to my OBGYN, they didn't see anything in there, so they told me to just stick it out for another few weeks to see if I still feel the pain and I still feel the problems. And if that's the case, then I'll need to be referred to a gastroenterologist. But pretty much every time I go, guys, like, it's painful, it's hard, there's blood, there's burning. I dread going every time. I also did end up in the hospital when Jace was about 4 weeks, and at this point I was doing fine, and all of a sudden I just randomly spiked a fever of 105 out of nowhere. And with me, when I get sick, like, usually I just spike fevers, like, out of the blue. Like, it's not a gradual raise. Like, I don't gradually start to feel poor. It's just like bam, like, 1 minute I'm fine, the next minute I'm like on the floor crying because I'm in pain and my head hurts and I'm so hot. So I ended up spiking a fever 105, and this was like at 1 a.m. or so I really had no choice but to go to the hospital. I called Jace's pediatrician, I called my OBGYN, and we were on our way to the doctor. We had to drop Jace off at my parents'. I didn't want to bring him to the hospital when he's like a newborn. That's nasty. And I was really upset. I was so upset that because I was breastfeeding, that maybe I had transferred something to him, that I had a virus that, you know, would affect him. So I really was so concerned and so overwhelmed about his well-being that I was still so stressed out, and it wasn't helping my case. I was freaking out. I was crying my eyes out. I was so concerned because I hadn't been away from Jace, and I really didn't want to be away from him when I was so worried about his well-being, but I really didn't have much of a choice. We got to the hospital. My fever at that point had gone down to 100.7, but my heart rate was sky high at 150. I was tachycardic. They put me on a heart monitor while I was there. My other vital signs were normal, so they kept monitoring me for several hours. They ran a lot of tests on me, and after several hours, they basically concluded that I had a UTI, and they told me to follow up with my primary care doctor within 2 days, because they originally wanted to have me admitted because my fever had not broke yet, even after Tylenol, and because of the really high fever I had at home. But they told me, you know, as long as I'm at home resting and everything like that, I'll be okay, and I don't need to come back unless I spike the fever again. Jace ended up being fine. And then when I went back to my PCP a couple of days later, they told me that I also had mastitis, which they kind of originally thought in the hospital. However, like, because my breasts weren't hurting, they really kind of ruled it out. But since I had left the hospital, my breasts started to cause me pain on the left side, and this is where another complication came in. So because I was apart from Jace from being sick, he had to go on formula, and originally I was just exclusively breastfeeding. I wouldn't even let them give him formula in the hospital. I wanted to exclusively breastfeed him from the beginning, and then I really didn't have a choice when it came to that, because when I had the fever, they weren't sure if my milk was safe to give him, if it could have contaminated him or harmed him, so I had no choice but to put him on formula. And they asked me to not feed him while I still had a fever, so even when I had gotten home, like, I couldn't feed him, he was still on the formula. Ever since then, I've been having an extremely hard time producing enough milk for him. In the time when he got the formula, I was feeding him for myself probably like 1 to 2 ounces, and then when he got the formula, he started eating 4+ ounces, and when I would feed him, it wouldn't satiate him, and then I would put him on, he would drink for a while, and then he would start crying at the breast and just need more food. So ever since then, I have pretty much been unable to go back to just exclusively breastfeeding. I've had to supplement him every single feeding because he just doesn't seem to be getting enough, because he's screaming and crying when I go to feed him, and then he's not getting enough. So since then, it's been extremely challenging, and unfortunately I haven't been able to get him back to just the breast milk, and it's been something that has been pretty hard for me, and that has really taken an emotional toll on me. It's really taken an emotional toll on me, and to want to do something for your child that you strongly believe in, but you're just completely unable and you're not up to par is a really hard pill to swallow. And you know, since then I've been really trying hard to get my breast milk back in, but I feel like it just keeps getting worse and worse. His appetite keeps growing and growing and growing, and no matter what, I'm not producing enough for him. And because I had the mastitis that I was talking about, my left breast like just was not producing anything. At that point, like it was clogged. Like I tried pumping and I tried everything. There was just no milk coming out of it. Eventually, after a few days of compresses and everything, there's milk that came out, but there still is very little milk that comes out of that side, like not even an ounce anymore. So it's been impossible really to feed him because only one side is really functioning, and even that side isn't up to par with what he needs. There's been several nights where I've just, you know, cried. Alright guys, that's all I have for my 1 month postpartum update. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'll see you guys next time. Bye.